Nobody on Kessa Station looked at me twice. That suited me fine. I hauled crates on the lower dock for 14 months. Protein blocks, filtration cores, whatever the supply runs dropped off. And in all that time, I don't think the Garrison crew learned my name. I was the hauler or the civilian, or, when Sergeant Brask was in a mood, the help. I didn't mind much. A frontier station doesn't pay you to be noticed. It pays you to move tonnage and keep your head down, and I was good at both. The Razor Cats started showing up around month 3. Nobody else wanted them near the dock. They were lean, fast things, amber-eyed, with a curved blade of bone at each forepaw that could open a pressure suit in one drag. The Garrison called them vermin and shot at the bold ones until the rest learned to stay up in the rafter scaffolding, out of rifle range, watching us load and unload like we were something to study rather than something to eat. I started leaving scraps. Not out of softness. I lost a good coat to one of them my second week, and I respected what they could do to a person who got careless. But they were hungry, and the station threw away enough protein trim every shift to feed a small army, and I figured a creature that smart deserved better than getting plinked at from a guard tower. I left a bucket by the third loading bay each night. For 2 months, they didn't touch it while I was watching. Then one night, I sat with my back to the crate stack, eating my own ration cold, and I heard claws on metal close. I didn't move, didn't look, just kept eating. The one who came down first was bigger than the others, scarred along one shoulder, missing a notch out her left ear. She took the bucket in her teeth, dragged it 6 feet back, and ate without taking her eyes off me. After that, she came every night. After that, the others followed her lead, the way packs do. And by month 6, I had a dozen Razor Cats who'd let me sit 20 feet from them while they ate, who'd watch me load crates instead of watching me as a meal, who'd vanished into the dark the second any Garrison boots came near. I never touched one. Not until the night, the scarred female. I'd started thinking of her as Notch, though I never said it out loud where anyone could hear, walked up while I was crouched checking a crate seal, and put her head against my outstretched hand like it was nothing at all. Her jaw was warm. The bone blade folded flat against a wrist, harmless, the way a cat sheathes its claws. I sat there a long minute, not breathing right, and she let me. After that, small things changed, one at a time, none of them dramatic enough to mention to anyone. She started waiting by the bay door instead of the rafters, low to the deck, ears up like she was timing my shift change better than the station clock did. Twice I caught her watching me check a crate seal with what I can only call interest, head canted, like she was learning to work the way you learn a person's habits. Not because it mattered to her, but because it was mine. The younger cats, the half-grown ones still finding their balance on those bladed forepaws, started edging closer too, copying her, copying me, until I had 4 or 5 of them sitting in a loose ring around my dinner break most nights, not asking for anything, just present. I let it happen slowly. I didn't reach for them. I'd learned a long time back that the things worth having don't come any faster than they're ready to. I told myself it didn't mean anything I could use. A wild thing tolerating you is not the same as a wild thing choosing you. I'd learned that lesson on a dozen worlds before this one. So I kept my head down, kept hauling crates, and kept the bucket full, and didn't tell a soul. Sergeant Brask found out anyway. He had a way of finding out things that weren't his business. "You're feeding the vermin," he said, one shift change, loud enough for the whole dock crew to hear. He had that look men get when they've decided to be entertaining at someone else's expense. Talking to them too, I hear. "That true, hauler? You got a name for your little murder pack?" I didn't answer. Answering just gives a man like that more rope. Commands had 3 requests to cull that scaffold, he said, stepping closer, close enough that I could smell the recycled air staleness of his uniform. I keep telling them, leave it, the civilians basically tamed the ugly things. Maybe I should put that in the report. Hauler's pet army. Real morale booster. A couple of the younger guards laughed, the way you laugh when a sergeant wants you to. I went back to my crate. That was the wrong move, apparently, because he didn't like being worked around. He put a hand flat on my shoulder and shoved. Not hard enough to be an assault charge. Hard enough to put me on my back on the deck, plating with a crate corner biting into my spine and the whole dock crew watching to see what I'd do about it. I didn't do anything. I didn't have to. I'd never called them before. Not once. Not even when Brass' predecessor put a boot through my bucket out of spite. I kept that whistle. 3 notes low, the same 3 notes Notch had heard every single night for 8 months while I fed her, folded up and used, because I understood something Brass never bothered to learn. A pack doesn't answer a stranger's noise. A pack answers a voice it has decided, on its own terms, belongs to it. Lying on my back with a crate edge in my spine, I gave the whistle. The rafters came apart. 12 razor cats dropped off that scaffold in the same half second. No hesitation, no scatter. A single moving shape that broke apart only once it hit the deck, fanning out around me in a half circle with their bone blades unfolded and their ears flat back. Notch was first down and first to me, planting herself between my body and Brass boots with her head low and a sound coming out of her chest that wasn't a growl so much as a promise. The rest fell in behind her like they drilled it, which they hadn't, not once, not with me, because I'd never asked them to be anything but fed. The dock crew didn't move. Brass didn't move. I have never in my life seen a man's face do what his did. The certainty just draining straight out of it, replaced by the math of 12 sets of bone blades and one badly misjudged shove. Easy, I said to Notch, not to him. Quiet. The same tone I used over the bucket every night. Easy, I'm fine. She didn't ease. None of them did. They held that half circle, locked on Brass, while I got myself up onto one elbow, and then my feet, slow, unhurried, because a sudden human movement in the middle of that would have been the last mistake anyone made that shift. Sergeant, I said, once I was standing, brushing dock grit off my sleeve. I'd say the report writes itself. Hauler's pet army. You said it. He didn't answer. He took one step back, and then another, hands open at his sides like he was trying to prove to 12 animals that he wasn't worth the trouble. Which, in that moment, he wasn't. Notch watched him go the whole way, every step, until the bay door shut behind him. Then, and only then, did she turn that low sound off and look back at me, head tilting like she was checking I'd come through it whole. Stand down, I told her, and I don't know why I expected anything. But the whole formation broke at once, the way it had formed. 11 cats peeling off toward the shadows and the scaffold, unhurried now, while Notch stayed a moment longer, pressed her scarred head against my hand once, and then went up after them, blade folded flat, gone into the dark like none of it had happened. The dock crew didn't laugh that time. Nobody called me the hauler after that, either. Not to be kind, I think, but because the word didn't fit anymore and they didn't have another one ready. Brass put in for a transfer before the month was out. I heard later he told whoever signed off on it that the station's wildlife situation had gotten out of hand, which was the closest thing to an apology I ever got, and the only one I needed. I never asked for an army. I asked for nothing the whole 8 months, just left the bucket out and ate my dinner cold and let a half-wild thing decide on her own time whether I was worth the trouble of trusting. That's the part nobody on the station understood until it was standing in a half circle around me with its blades out. I didn't tame anything. I just waited long enough for something dangerous to recognize that I wasn't. Command did write a report in the end. I read it once. It called the Kesseline Razor Cats an unprecedented case of voluntary pack bonding with a non-aggressive civilian asset. I call it something simpler. I call it Notch coming down off that scaffold the second I hit the deck, and 11 more behind her, because somewhere in 8 months of cold rations and a low whistle, I'd stopped being prey to them and started being pack. Nobody's shoved me since.